The silence of deep space was broken by a transmission that would change everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her command chair aboard the UES Prometheus, flagship of Earth's newly commissioned Vanguard battle fleet. The massive dreadnought cruised through the outer edge of the Sol system, conducting routine patrol exercises with her escort ships. Chen had spent 30 years climbing the ranks of the United Earth Navy, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for what was about to unfold. "Admiral, we're picking up an unusual signal," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres from the communications station. His voice carried a note of confusion that made Chen sit up straighter. "What kind of signal, Torres?" It's definitely not human in origin. The frequency patterns are unlike anything in our databases. But, Admiral, it's structured. Organized. This isn't random cosmic noise." Chen felt her pulse quicken. First contact protocols had been theoretical until this moment. "Can you decode it?" "Working on it now. The AI systems are finding some mathematical patterns. Wait." Torres's eyes widened as data scrolled across his screens. "Admiral, this is a distress signal. Multiple sources, actually. And they're broadcasting on what appears to be a galactic emergency frequency." The bridge fell silent except for the low hum of the ship's systems. Chen stood and walked to the central holographic display as Torres uploaded the signal data. What appeared before them was a star map unlike any human astronomers had ever conceived. It showed not just stars, but trade routes, territorial boundaries, and dozens of different civilizations scattered across their local galaxy arm. "My God," whispered Dr. Elena Vasquez, the fleet's chief xenobiologist who had been conducting research aboard the Prometheus. "We're not alone. We never were alone." The distress signals painted a grim picture. A species called the Zephyrians were under siege by something identified only as the Devourers. Multiple star systems had already fallen, their populations either dead or enslaved. The messages spoke of entire worlds stripped of resources, their surfaces left barren and lifeless. Chen turned to her tactical officer. "Commander Harrison, what's our current fleet status?" "All ships operational, Admiral. We have the Prometheus, heavy cruisers Valiant and Indomitable, destroyers Ajax and Hermes, and support vessels Athena and Minerva. Full complement of Marines and fighter squadrons aboard." "Sir," Torres interrupted, his voice tense. "I'm getting real-time updates from the distress signals. The Devourer fleet is moving toward a system called Kepler 442. According to these transmissions, it's home to over 3 billion Zephyrian civilians." Chen studied the galactic map. Kepler 442 was approximately 1,200 light-years from Earth. With their new quantum slip drives, the journey would take about 6 days. But that assumed they could navigate unknown space and arrive at coordinates they'd never visited. "Dr. Vasquez, what do we know about these Zephyrians?" The xenobiologist pulled up translated portions of the distress signals on her tablet. "From what I can decipher, they're a peaceful species. Their technology appears to be focused on terraforming, agriculture, and art. They mention having no military fleet to speak of. They're calling out to anyone in the galaxy who might help them." "And no one's responding?" "It appears not, Admiral. These signals have been broadcasting for weeks." Chen walked back to her command chair, her mind racing. Humanity had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. They'd built the Vanguard battle fleet as a precaution, not knowing what they might find in the stars. The ships were designed for exploration and defense, equipped with the most advanced weapons and shields human engineering could produce. But were they ready for galactic warfare against an unknown enemy? "Admiral," called out Ensign Park from the sensor station. "I'm detecting unusual quantum signatures approximately 800 light-years spinward. The patterns match energy readings described in the Zephyrian transmissions for Devourer ships." The weight of the moment settled on Chen's shoulders. Earth's government had given her broad authority to act in humanity's best interests during deep space operations. But this decision would affect not just Earth, but potentially the course of galactic civilization. She activated the ship-wide communication system. This is Admiral Chen to all hands. As you may have heard through the rumor mill, we've received communication from alien civilizations. A peaceful species called the Zephyrians is under attack by hostile forces known as Devourers. They've asked for help from anyone in the galaxy willing to assist them. Chen paused, looking around at her bridge crew. She saw determination in their eyes, mixed with fear and excitement. I won't lie to you. We're about to enter unknown territory against an enemy we know nothing about. Earth's safety protocols would suggest we return home and report our findings. But 3 billion innocent lives hang in the balance, and, apparently, we're the only ones willing to help. She activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We're setting course for the Kepler 442 system to render aid to the Zephyrians. Navigation, plot a course using the galactic coordinates from their distress signals. Engineering, I want all ships at maximum readiness. We'll be jumping into potential combat. The response from her captains was immediate and unanimous. Captain Rodriguez of the Valiant was first to respond. Prometheus, this is Valiant. We're ready to follow you to hell and back, Admiral. Similar confirmations came from across the fleet. Chen felt a surge of pride in her crews. They understood the magnitude of what they were attempting. Dr. Vasquez, I need you to work with Torres on translating more of these transmissions. I want to know everything we can about Zephyrian technology, culture, and, most importantly, what we're up against with these Devourers. Already on it, Admiral. But there's something else you should know. The Zephyrians aren't just asking for military assistance. They're offering something in return. What kind of something? Knowledge, Admiral. Their transmissions include offers to share their terraforming technology, their understanding of galactic civilizations, and access to what they call the Galactic Communication Network. Apparently, there's an entire infrastructure of peaceful species that share information and trade across the galaxy. Chen nodded. Humanity had been wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they were discovering they were late to a very large party. Time to destination, she asked the navigation officer. At maximum slip speed, 5 days and 18 hours, Admiral. Make it 5 days. Push the drives if you have to. As the Vanguard battle fleet engaged their quantum slip drives and disappeared from Sol system, Chen couldn't help but wonder if she was making the greatest mistake in human history, or its greatest triumph. The journey through quantum slip space gave the fleet time to prepare. Dr. Vasquez and her team worked around the clock to decode more Zephyrian transmissions. What they discovered painted a picture of a galaxy far more complex and dangerous than humanity had imagined. The Devourers, according to Zephyrian records, had appeared approximately 50 years ago in a distant spiral arm. They consumed entire worlds, stripping them of all biological matter and useful materials before moving on. Dozens of civilizations had fallen to them, and their technology seemed to adapt and improve with each conquest. More troubling was the apparent response of other galactic civilizations. Rather than banding together to fight the threat, most species had simply retreated to heavily defended core worlds, hoping the Devourers would be satisfied with the outer rim territories. It's like watching a neighborhood burn down while everyone locks their doors and hopes the fire doesn't spread to their house, Dr. Vasquez explained to the senior staff during a briefing. What about military capabilities? Asked Colonel Martinez, commander of the fleet's marine contingent. Do we have any intel on their weapons and tactics? From what we can piece together, they use some form of biomechanical technology. Their ships appear to be partially alive, capable of self-repair and adaptation. They're described as having devastating energy weapons and the ability to deploy swarms of smaller attack craft. Captain Harrison studied the tactical data. Any weaknesses mentioned? The Zephyrians note that Devourer ships seem vulnerable to coordinated attacks and that their adaptation process takes time. Hit them hard and fast before they can adjust to your tactics. Chen absorbed this information. Humanity's advantage lay in their unpredictability. The Devourers would have no prior experience with human tactics or technology. But that same unknown factor worked against them. They had no idea what they were walking into. On the 4th day of their journey, the fleet received updated transmissions from Kepler 442. The Devourer Advance Fleet had arrived and begun orbital bombardment of the outer planets. Zephyrian evacuations were underway, but their transport capabilities were limited. Admiral, Torres reported, we're also picking up something else. There are other ships in the system. Not Zephyrian and not Devourer. Unknown aliens? Possibly. Or? Torres hesitated. The energy signatures are similar to ours. They could be other species with technology comparable to humanity's. The plot was thickening. Chen ordered the fleet to battle stations as they prepared to drop out of quantum slip. Whatever awaited them at Kepler 442, they would meet it as Earth's representatives to the galaxy. As the stars shifted back into normal space around them, the scope of the battle became clear. Kepler 442 was a binary star system with 7 planets, 3 of which showed signs of Zephyrian civilization. Massive space stations orbited the inhabited worlds, and the space between planets was filled with civilian transport ships desperately trying to evacuate. But, dominating the scene were the Devourer ships. Chen had seen plenty of human warships, but nothing had prepared her for the sight of Devourer vessels. They looked like a fusion of metal and flesh, with organic curves and mechanical weapons systems. The largest ship was easily 3 times the size of the Prometheus, its hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Jesus Christ, whispered Harrison. What are those things? Our enemy, Chen replied firmly. All ships, battle formation Delta. Launch all fighters. Marines, prepare for potential boarding actions. The Vanguard battle fleet spread out into attack formation, their sleek human-designed ships looking small but determined against the alien monstrosities. Chen noticed other ships engaging the Devourers, vessels with unfamiliar but clearly advanced designs. Torres, get me a calm channel to those unknown ships. Trying, Admiral. Their communication systems are strange. I'm having to route through the Zephyrian emergency network. A new voice crackled through the speakers, speaking in accented but understandable English. Human vessels, this is Captain Thane of the Rigel Defense Force. We received word of your arrival from the Zephyrians. About damn time someone else showed up to this fight. Chen smiled grimly. It seemed humanity wasn't the only species willing to help. Captain Thane, this is Admiral Chen of the Earth Vanguard battle fleet. What's the tactical situation? We've got 6 Devourer capital ships and about 50 smaller vessels. They've been systematically destroying evacuation transports. My ships and 3 other allied vessels have been trying to cover the civilian exodus, but we're outnumbered and outgunned. Chen studied the tactical display. The human fleet had 7 ships against overwhelming odds, but they had one advantage: complete surprise. The Devourers had never encountered human technology before. All ships, weapons free, Chen commanded. Let's show these bastards what happens when they threaten innocent people. Target the largest Devourer ship. Concentrated fire on my mark. The Prometheus and her escorts opened fire simultaneously. Human particle beam cannons, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic railguns lit up space with devastating precision. The massive Devourer ship's organic hull erupted in explosions as human weapons found their mark. But the enemy adapted quickly. The damaged sections began to regenerate, and the ship's own weapons turned toward the human fleet. Evasive maneuvers. Chen shouted as alien energy beams lanced through space where her ships had been moments before. The battle for Kepler 442 had begun, and humanity had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible, by standing between predators and their prey, regardless of the odds. As the Prometheus shuddered under enemy fire, Chen realized that this moment would define not just humanity's role in the galaxy, but whether the galaxy would have a future worth fighting for. The space around Kepler 442 erupted into chaos as human weapons met alien defenses for the first time in galactic history. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display as her fleet's opening salvo struck home against the massive Devourer flagship. The creature ship writhed as explosions bloomed across its biomechanical hull, but her satisfaction was short-lived. The damaged sections began knitting themselves back together with disturbing efficiency. "Admiral, their hull is regenerating faster than we can damage it with conventional fire," reported Commander Harrison. "We need a new approach." "Prometheus to all ships," Chen broadcast. "Switch to rapid fire pattern beta. Don't give them time to heal between hits. Keep moving and keep firing." The human fleet scattered across the battlefield, their ships dancing between massive devourer vessels like wolves harassing much larger predators. The Prometheus led by example, her main guns switching to a constant barrage of smaller, more frequent shots that prevented the enemy's organic healing processes from keeping pace. Captain Thane's voice crackled over the communication channel. "Impressive tactics, Admiral. My ships will coordinate with yours. Target the weapon nodes on their hulls, they can't regenerate active firing systems as quickly." Chen quickly assessed her new allies. The Rigel Defense Force ships were angular, crystalline vessels that fired beams of pure energy. Alongside them flew two other alien designs, one resembling a massive insect with weapon ports along its segmented body, and another that looked like a living coral reef studded with missile launchers. "Torres, can you get me communication with our other allies?" "Working on it, Admiral." The insectoid ship is from the Chitauri Collective, and the coral vessel belongs to something called the Reef Builders. They're all part of what they call the Resistance Network. The Resistance Network. Chen filed that information away as she focused on the immediate battle. The Devourers were adapting to human tactics with alarming speed. Their secondary vessels, smaller but still larger than human destroyers, began swarming toward the Vanguard fleet. "Incoming attack craft," warned Ensign Park. "Dozens of them, closing fast." "Launch all fighters," Chen ordered. "Colonel Martinez, prepare your Marines for potential boarding actions. These things might try to attach to our hulls." Commander Sarah Walsh, leader of the 1st Fighter Squadron, led her pilots out to meet the approaching swarm. Her voice came through clear and determined over the calm. "Prometheus, this is Phoenix Leader. We've got eyes on the bogies. They look like flying nightmares, but they bleed just fine. Engaging now." The space between the capital ships filled with smaller craft as human fighters met Devourer attack ships. The enemy vessels were indeed nightmarish, part machine, part creature, with writhing tentacles that shot energy bolts and mechanical claws designed for tearing through ship hulls. But human pilots had one advantage the galaxy hadn't seen before: they were absolutely fearless in the face of the unknown. Where other species might have hesitated when confronted with such alien horrors, the humans pressed their attacks with reckless courage. "Phoenix 2, you've got one on your tail," Walsh called out. "I see him, Phoenix Leader. Going into the debris field from that destroyed transport." Lieutenant Kim Park dove his fighter into the wreckage of a Zephyrian civilian ship, using the twisted metal to break his pursuer's lock. The Devourer craft, designed for open space combat, couldn't match the human pilot's ability to navigate through obstacles. Meanwhile, the capital ship battle continued with devastating intensity. The human ships had found their rhythm, using their superior speed and maneuverability to stay ahead of the Devourer's heavy weapons while maintaining constant fire on specific target areas. The UES Valiant, under Captain Rodriguez, had taken severe damage but remained in the fight. "Prometheus, this is Valiant. We've lost main engines and most of our port weapons, but we're still breathing. Requesting permission to ram that medium-sized bastard that's been picking off evacuation ships." "Negative, Valiant. Hold position and provide covering fire for the civilians. We're not losing anyone today if I can help it." Chen's resolve was tested moments later when one of the massive Devourer ships suddenly accelerated toward a cluster of Zephyrian evacuation transports. The civilian ships were helpless, loaded with refugees and barely armed. "They're going for the transports," called out Captain Thane. "All ships, intercept course." But they were too far away. The Devourer's ship would reach the civilians long before any of the Allied vessels could intervene. Chen watched in horror as the enemy vessel's weapons powered up, targeting the defenseless transports. That's when the UES Hermes proved why human destroyers were built for speed. Captain Lisa Okafor pushed her ship's engines beyond their safety limits, quantum drive flaring as the Hermes shot across the battlefield like a comet. Prometheus, this is Hermes. We can make it, but we'll have to take that shot meant for the civilians. Captain Okafor, your ship can't survive a direct hit from that weapon, Shin said, though she already knew what the response would be. With respect, Admiral, that's not the point. Hermes out. The Hermes slid between the Devourer ship and the evacuation fleet just as the alien vessel fired. The destroyer's shields flared brilliant white as they absorbed the massive energy blast, then collapsed entirely. The ship's armor held for precious seconds before beginning to buckle under secondary weapon fire. But those seconds were enough. Captain Thane's ship arrived at full speed, ramming the Devourer vessel amidships with a crystalline prow designed for exactly such tactics. The alien ship's biomechanical hull ruptured, spilling strange fluids and writhing organic components into space. Hermes, report. Chen called out. Okafor's voice came through strained but alive. We're hurt bad, Admiral, but still flying. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7, but the crew compartments held. My people know how to build ships that last. The tide of battle was turning. The Devourers had expected easy prey, a peaceful species with minimal defenses and, perhaps a few token allies. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated fleet that fought with a combination of tactical brilliance and sheer bloody-minded determination that the galaxy hadn't seen in generations. Dr. Vasquez's voice came through the calm from her position in the science bay. Admiral, I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from the Devourer flagship. I think it's preparing to retreat. Like hell it is, Chen replied grimly. All ships, concentrate fire on that flagship. Don't let it leave to terrorize another system. The combined Allied fleet unleashed everything they had at the massive Devourer command ship. Human particle beams, Rigel energy lances, Chitauri plasma bursts, and reef builder biomissiles converged on the creature vessel in a devastating barrage. The flagship's regenerative abilities, impressive as they were, simply couldn't keep pace with the coordinated assault. Its hull began to rupture in multiple places, biomechanical systems failing as its organic components died under the relentless fire. But the Devourers had one last surprise. Admiral, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions around the flagship, reported Ensign Park. It's doing something to local spacetime. The dying Devourer ship began to glow with an ominous energy. Space around it rippled like water, and the light from nearby stars began to bend and twist. Captain Thane's voice cut through the confusion. It's a quantum implosion device. They're going to take the entire system with them. All ships, emergency retreat. But there wasn't time. The gravitational distortions were expanding too quickly, and the civilian evacuation ships were caught in the outer edge of the field. If the device detonated fully, it would create a cascading dimensional collapse that would destroy everything within several light hours. Shen made a decision that would become legend throughout the galaxy. All ships, maintain position. Engineering, reroute all power to the main deflector array. Science, I need you to sync our quantum field generators with the other Allied ships. Admiral, what are you planning? Asked Dr. Vasquez. We're going to contain that explosion. Coordinate with our allies, we need to create a combined quantum field strong enough to bottle up their device. It was theoretically possible. Human quantum field technology, combined with the exotic abilities of their new allies, might be able to create a containment field powerful enough to absorb the Devourer weapon's energy. The key word being might. Prometheus to all Allied vessels. We need your help to contain this detonation. Link your quantum field generators with ours on my mark. The response was immediate. Every Allied ship in the fleet began synchronizing their field generators, creating an expanding web of quantum energy around the dying Devourer flagship. Field generators at maximum output, reported the engineering chief. Hull stress is approaching critical levels. The Devourer device reached critical mass. For a moment, it seemed as if the very fabric of space would tear apart. Reality bent and twisted around the flagship as dimension-destroying energies sought release. Then, the combined Allied field snapped into place around the explosion like a cosmic net. The devastating energies that should have destroyed the system instead found themselves trapped within an artificial quantum bubble created by the unified technology of 5 different species. The containment held for exactly 37 seconds, long enough for the explosion's energy to dissipate harmlessly into subspace. When the quantum fields finally collapsed, the Devourer flagship was gone, along with most of its escort vessels. The remaining enemy ships, faced with the complete destruction of their command vessel and the loss of over half their fleet, did what Devourers apparently never did: they retreated. As the alien attackers disappeared into quantum slipspace, the communications channels filled with voices from across the fleet. Humans, Rigelians, Chitauri, and reef builders all spoke at once in a dozen different languages, but the meaning was universal: they had won. "Admiral Chen, this is the Zephyrian High Council," came a new voice, speaking in carefully pronounced English. "We cannot adequately express our gratitude for what you and your allies have done. You have saved not just our people, but proven that the galaxy still has hope." Chen looked around her bridge at her exhausted but triumphant crew. They had set out from Earth as explorers and found themselves as liberators. But this was just the beginning. "High Council, this is Admiral Chen. We were honored to help, but I think we need to talk. About the Devourers, about this resistance network, and about what comes next." "Indeed, Admiral. We have much to discuss. But first, please allow us to tend to your wounded and repair your ships. It is the least we can do for the species that reminded the galaxy what courage looks like." As the Vanguard battle fleet moved into orbit around the main Zephyrian world, Chen realized that humanity had just taken its first steps onto a much larger stage. They had allies now, but also enemies that spanned the stars. The Devourers would be back, probably in greater numbers and with adapted technology designed specifically to counter human tactics. But they had also proven something important: sometimes all it takes to change the course of history is someone willing to stand up and fight when everyone else has given up hope. The galaxy had been waiting for someone to remind them that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the odds. Humanity had just volunteered for the job. The Zephyrian capital city of New Harmony stretched across the continental landmass like a living garden. Towering spires of crystalline material grew organically from the ground, connected by flowing bridges that seemed to bend and sway in the alien breeze. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Planetary Council chambers, watching human repair crews work alongside Zephyrian engineers to fix the battle damage on her fleet. It had been 3 days since the Battle of Kepler 442, and the immediate crisis was over. But, as Chen was learning, solving one problem in galactic politics typically created 10 new ones. "The quantum resonance cascade was most impressive," said Council Speaker Veltar, the Zephyrian leader whose species resembled tall, graceful humanoids with skin that shifted through subtle color patterns based on their emotions. "Our scientists estimate that your combined containment field prevented a dimensional collapse that would have destroyed this entire system." "We had good allies," Chen replied diplomatically. "Captain Thane's people showed remarkable coordination, and the Chitauri and reef builders brought technologies we'd never seen before." "Yes, the resistance network has grown stronger in recent years," Veltar said, his skin taking on darker hues that Chen had learned indicated serious concern. "But it is still not strong enough. The Devourers will return, and next time they will bring ships specifically designed to counter your tactics." That was the problem keeping Chen awake at night. The enemy they'd faced was clearly a scouting force, not a full invasion fleet. According to intelligence gathered from captured Devourer biotechnology, their main armadas contained hundreds of capital ships, each one adapted to counter the specific tactics and technologies of species they'd already conquered. "Admiral Chen," came a voice from behind her. She turned to see Captain Thane approaching, his blue-skinned features showing the exhaustion that all of them felt. The Rigelian officer had proven himself a capable ally and tactical genius during the battle. "The War Council is ready to convene." The War Council had been an inevitable development. Representatives from every species that had fought in the battle, plus several others who had arrived in the aftermath, gathered in the Zephyrian Council chambers to discuss their next moves. Chen found herself in the strange position of being humanity's first ambassador to galactic civilization, a role she was completely unprepared for. The council chamber was a marvel of alien architecture, with seating and environmental controls adapted for a dozen different species. Chen sat with her senior officers while around the circular room gathered representatives of the resistance network. Captain Thane spoke for the Rigel Defense Force, a coalition of worlds that had been among the first to actively resist the Devourers. Commander SSKF of the Chitauri Collective chittered and clicked in their insectoid language, translated in real time by advanced AI systems. The Reef Builder delegate, a symbiotic colony organism that looked like a walking coral garden, communicated through bioluminescent patterns. But the most impressive delegate was General Corax of the Draconian Empire. The 7-foot-tall reptilian warrior had arrived with a squadron of ships after the battle, drawn by reports of the humans' tactics. His species had been fighting the Devourers for decades from heavily fortified core worlds. "The question before us," General Corax said in a voice like grinding stones, "is whether these humans represent a genuine new factor in our war, or merely another species that will retreat to defended positions when the Devourers bring their full might to bear." Chen felt the attention of the room focus on her. This was clearly a test, and her answer would determine whether humanity would be accepted as equals in the galactic community or dismissed as reckless newcomers. "General Corax, I understand your skepticism," she replied calmly. "Humanity has been in space for barely 50 years. We've only had faster-than-light travel for 5. By galactic standards, we're children playing with technology we don't fully understand." Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the defiant response they'd expected from the species that had just defeated a Devourer fleet against impossible odds. "But," Chin continued, standing to address the room, "we came here because we heard people calling for help. Not because we had strategic interests to protect, not because we were paid, not because ancient treaties obligated us to act. We came because it was the right thing to do." She activated the holographic display in the center of the chamber, showing tactical data from the battle. "Our ships were outgunned, outnumbered, and fighting with technologies the Devourers had never encountered. We should have been destroyed in the first exchange of fire. Instead, we won because we fought as if the lives we were protecting mattered more than our own survival." Commander SSKF's translation system rendered his chittering into words, "Admirable sentiment, but sentiment does not stop Devourer fleets." "You're right," Chen agreed. "But coordination does. Intelligence sharing does. New tactics and technologies do. For too long, this galaxy's response to the Devourer threat has been essentially defensive. Each species retreats to their strongest worlds and hopes the enemy will be satisfied with conquering everyone else." General Corax leaned forward. "And what would you propose instead, human? We go on the offensive." The chamber erupted in surprised voices speaking a dozen languages. Chen waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "The Devourers adapt to our tactics by studying our battles and modifying their technology. But that adaptation takes time. If we can coordinate our attacks, hit multiple targets simultaneously across different fronts, we can stay ahead of their adaptation cycle." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward with her tablet full of data. "Our analysis of captured Devourer biotechnology shows that their adaptation process is centralized. They share information through a biological network that connects all their ships and bases. But that network has limitations. It can only process so much new information at once." "You're suggesting we overload their adaptation system," said Captain Thane, understanding immediately. "Hit them with so many new tactics and technologies at once that they can't adapt to all of them." "Exactly. But it requires every species in the resistance network to contribute something unique. Technologies, tactics, intelligence, whatever you can bring to the fight." Council Speaker Veltar's skin patterns showed cautious optimism. "The Zephyrians can contribute our terraforming technology. Our atmospheric processors could potentially be weaponized, and our bioengineering knowledge might help us understand Devourer organisms. The Rigelians have advanced energy weapons and shield technology," added Captain Thane. "Plus detailed intelligence on Devourer fleet movements in the outer spiral." One by one, the delegates began offering contributions. The Chitauri had swarm tactics and small craft technologies that could overwhelm larger ships. The reef builders possessed biotechnology that could potentially corrupt devourer organic systems. Even smaller species represented in the network had unique contributions: sensor technologies, stealth systems, resource extraction capabilities. General Corax remained skeptical. These are all valuable assets, but coordination on the scale you're proposing has never been achieved. The logistics alone would be nightmarish. That's where humanity's contribution comes in, Chen said with a slight smile. We may be new to galactic politics, but we've been fighting wars for our entire history. More importantly, we've gotten very good at organizing coalitions of different groups to fight common enemies. She activated another display showing Earth's military history. Human military doctrine emphasizes combined arms operations, joint task forces, and allied coordination. We've spent centuries learning how to make different armies work together effectively. You're proposing to turn the resistance network into a true military alliance, observed Veltar. More than that. I'm proposing we create a unified command structure that can coordinate species-specific abilities into combined operations. Not just humans leading other species, but every species contributing their expertise to joint planning and execution. The chamber fell silent as the delegates considered the implications. What Chen was suggesting would require unprecedented cooperation between species that had barely interacted before the Devourer crisis. Commander SSKF broke the silence. The Chitauri Collective has observed human tactical flexibility. Your species demonstrates unusual ability to adapt mid-battle. This could be valuable in coordination role. The Draconian Empire has extensive experience in defensive operations, added General Corax slowly. But our offensive capabilities have been limited by lack of intelligence and support. A coordinated network might change that calculation. Over the next several hours, the delegates hammered out the framework for what would become known as the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Each species would maintain sovereignty over their own territories and fleets, but would contribute ships, resources, and expertise to joint operations coordinated by a unified command. Chen found herself nominated as the Alliance's first Supreme Commander, a role she accepted with considerable reluctance and the understanding that it would be temporary until more experienced galactic leaders could take over. There is one more matter we must discuss, said Veltar as the formal agreements were being finalized. The Devourers are not the only threat to galactic civilization. There are other powers that have remained neutral in this conflict, but may not appreciate our new assertiveness. The hegemony, growled General Corax. Ancient species that consider themselves the rightful rulers of this galaxy. They've maintained neutrality because the Devourers haven't threatened their core territories, but a successful resistance might change their calculations. How big a problem are we talking about? Asked Chun. Captain Thane pulled up a galactic map showing territorial boundaries. The hegemony controls about 30% of the galaxy's core systems. Their technology is more advanced than anything in the resistance network, and their fleets are massive. They've been content to let the outer rim burn as long as the Devourers don't threaten their interests. But if we start winning, Chen said, understanding the implications, they might decide we're a bigger threat to their control than the Devourers are. Precisely. The hegemony prefers a galaxy where weaker species remain weak. A successful resistance alliance that proves effective coordination between different civilizations challenges their fundamental worldview. Chen studied the map, noting the strategic positions of hegemony territories. They controlled key hyperspace routes and resource systems that would be essential for any sustained campaign against the Devourers. How long do we have before they make a decision about us? Unknown, admitted Veltar. The hegemony moves slowly, but they are not fools. They will have heard about the Battle of Kepler 442 and our alliance negotiations. I estimate we have weeks, not months, before they respond. The weight of galactic politics settled on Chen's shoulders. Humanity had volunteered to help save a single species from destruction and found themselves at the center of a conflict that could reshape the entire galaxy. But, looking around the chamber at the diverse faces of species that had decided to work together instead of hiding behind their own defenses, she felt something she hadn't experienced since the battle, hope. Then, we'd better make those weeks count, she said. If we're going to face the Devourers and the hegemony, we need to prove that cooperation is stronger than conquest. And we need to do it fast. As the delegates began planning their first joint operations, none of them realized that the Devourer fleet that had escaped from Kepler 442 was already reporting back to their masters. The adaptation process had begun, and the next battle would test every assumption they'd made about their enemy's capabilities. But they also didn't know that scattered across the galaxy, other species were monitoring their communications. Not all of them were hostile. Some were merely waiting to see if this new alliance could actually achieve what it promised before deciding whether to risk joining the fight themselves. The Battle of Kepler 442 had been won, but the war for galactic civilization was just beginning.